Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows. CrimeCon, the world's #1 true crime event, is coming back to London on Saturday the 10th and Sunday the 12th of June 2023. Get inside the mind of serial killers and psychopaths, learn from leading criminologists, hear from the families and survivors, meet your favourite true crime podcaster, immerse yourself in forensic evidence and delve deeper into unsolved crimes. CrimeCon is the ultimate true crime weekend, partnered by CBS Reality, the expert-led true crime TV channel. Scottish Murders will be there, so come and join us. Quote Scottish for your special 10% discount. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit crimecon.co.uk. So, this is our update episode. We've now covered so many cases that we thought we'd let you know of any updates that may have happened, or of any further information that we found out. So, first off is regarding our Assumptions Made episode, which covered 2 cases, one being Alexander, or Sandy, Drummond. Sandy was 33 years old when his body was found near his home in Boar Hills in Fife in 1991, and the post-mortem determined that he had died from asphyxiation following being strangled by a jiu-jitsu stranglehold, but the case still remains unsolved. In October 2022, the BBC produced a series called David Wilson's Crime Files Cold Cases, and in episode 2, Mysterious Deaths, David Wilson, who is a criminologist, investigated Sandy's case and discussed the case with crime writer Douglas Skelton, who had actually spoken to Sandy's mother, Effie, before she died, and Douglas believed that the motive for Sandy's murder could potentially have been sexual in nature. Sadly though, nothing further came of David Wilson's investigation, with it being believed that, due to the passage of time and the lack of forensic evidence, it was unlikely to ever be solved, unless somebody actually confessed. There are 10 episodes in Series 3 of David Wilson's Crime Files on the BBC, all of which are Scottish cold cases, and were very interesting, definitely worth having a watch. Links will be in the show notes, as well as on our website, scottishmurders.com. Okay, next up is our Left Behind episode, which again featured 2 cases, one of which was Marion Hodge. Marion Hodge was 34 years old when she disappeared in 1984. She had apparently packed her bag after a fight with her husband Bill the night before and asked her husband to take her to the bus station in White Sands, Dumfries, which he said he did at 7:30 a.m. Marion was never seen again, and this remains an unsolved case. When she was dropped off at the bus station, she had with her a blue canvas suitcase and a brown handbag. She was wearing a cream high-collared blouse, a grey skirt and black sandals. She was reported missing 3 days later. Her family said that she was a devoted mother who would never leave her children, and it was her son's 15th birthday on the day she went missing. While Marion's case has been reviewed over the years, in late February 2022, her case was passed on to Police Scotland Unresolved Homicide Investigation Team. A week later, on the 8th of March 2022, DCI Stephen McGrath appeared on Crime Watch Live to appeal for any information about this case. He was asking anybody who had been in the White Sands area on Friday the 6th of July 1984 around 7:30 a.m. and who may have seen Marion, or if they had seen anything strange leading up to Marion's disappearance, to please come forward if they haven't already, however small the detail may be. Anybody with any information can contact the dedicated inquiry team on 0141 305 4551 or Police Scotland on 101 if you're in the UK. Crime Watch Live reported the next day that they had had a good response from the public and that police were following a couple of lines of inquiry. If you'd like to watch this appeal on Crime Watch Live, which included a heartfelt message from Marion's family, again the link will be in our show notes and on scottishmurders.com. Okay, the next case update is for Linda Spence. Linda was abducted, tortured and murdered in April 2011 by Colin Coates and Philip Wade, and despite them both being convicted and sentenced for her murder, her body has never been found. So the update is that in March 2022, Detective Superintendent Suzanne Chow from the Major Investigation Team made a statement where she advised that Police Scotland had been continually searching for Linda's remains, but were now focusing their attention on the rural location of Auchenbreck, which is about an hour and 46-minute drive north and then northwest of Glasgow, where they would be carrying out searches in the area for Linda's remains. Detective Superintendent Chow was appealing for anyone who had been in the area in April 2011 who may have observed anything untoward to please come forward, and that there would be additional police officers in the area that they could speak to relay any information they may have. She went on to say that this would be a complex assessment, which, according to the Sun newspaper, covered 21 acres of rough ground, and that it may take some time. This lead had apparently come from one of Linda's killers, with a source saying in the Sun newspaper in March 2022 that the information is being taken seriously as it comes from one of them, going on to say a common tactic by police in cases like this is to bug prison cells in the hope something key is said. However, the search, which included forensic scientists and soil experts, was called off in late July, with Detective Superintendent Chow saying, "The final searches have now been completed and unfortunately we have not recovered Linda's remains or any new evidence." And then, in October 2022, it was reported in the Daily Record newspaper that Coates and Wade had begun to cooperate with the police for the first time since being jailed. Apparently, an investigator had been hired by a cellmate of Coates's to speak to Coates to try and identify the area where Linda had been buried, as Coates appeared confused of the exact location where he had buried Linda's body. Upon the investigator speaking with Coates, he apparently had identified a potential site to be searched and had passed this information on to the police. However, the police appear dubious by this information, as apparently the man who had actually hired the investigator for Coates is, according to the Daily Mail, a convicted drug dealer, and he apparently believes that any help he can offer will boost his chance of parole. So the police are taking stock of this apparent new information before forging ahead. Apparently, though, it's been said that if the police don't carry out the search, the people behind hiring the investigator will seek permission to search the area themselves. So that was in October 2022. I'll let you know, obviously, if Linda's remains are found. One wee extra thing I found was that while it was reported in the Daily Record in 2014 that Linda's mother Patricia had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and was appealing for Coates and Wade to reveal where Linda's body was before she died, but in October 2022, again in the Daily Record, a source close to Linda's parents, Jim and Patricia, said her mum and dad don't care where the information comes from, they just want Linda found, which suggests that Linda's mum is thankfully still alive. Okay, the next case I'm going to give you an update about is the Unknown Bairn. This was where the body of a boy between the age of 2 and 4 was found washed up at Tayport in 1971 by Ian the Postie, who was out walking with his 5-year-old son. So when looking for any new information about this case, I straight away found a BBC podcast called The Cruelty, A Child Unclaimed, which is a 9-part podcast that was released in September 2022, where host David Donaldson looks closer at this case and tries to see if he can uncover the unknown bairn's identity. It talked about Bob Beveridge in the podcast, who was the retired police officer who claimed to have an idea about the wee boy's identity, but that he wouldn't say who he thinks the wee boy might be. But according to the Scottish Daily Express, he did say he believed he was linked to the Scottish traveller community, which is really interesting because the host of the podcast, David Donaldson, is a member of the Scottish Travellers community himself. So, will David Donaldson be able to uncover the identity of the unknown bairn after 51 years? Well, the answer is yes, he does. And apparently, it's been a long open secret in the travelling community. It's a really sad story, especially when a family member of the unknown bairn meets Ian the Postie's family, the family who have taken care of the unknown bairn's grave for all these years. It is so great to finally know the story of the wee boy who was washed up at Tayport 51 years ago, and his name, and who the Tayport community have looked after for so long and taken into their hearts. To find out that he was loved very much by his family and was never forgotten, and that it was circumstances that had stopped them being able to come forward was so touching. The Unknown Bairn is now known. He was called Sandy. Really worth a listen. It's a fantastic podcast, but I don't want to spoil it for you by saying any more. You can find a link to this podcast in the show notes or on our website, scottishmurders.com. So there's not really an update regarding Arlene Fraser, who was married to the violent and controlling Nat Fraser, but who had split up, and Arlene was seeking to get a divorce before suddenly disappearing in 1998 from her bungalow in Elgin. Her husband was convicted for her murder despite there being no body. She was 38 years old. Her husband continues to deny any involvement, and sadly Arlene's body has never been found, despite Arlene's family pleading with Nat to tell them where her body is. However, retired Detective Superintendent Alan Smith, who worked on the case at the time, doesn't believe that Nat Fraser will ever reveal where Arlene's body is, as he feels this is the last bit of control he has over her. Sad, but likely true. Okay, a wee update regarding a witness at Bradley Welsh's murder trial. Bradley was 48 years old when he was shot in the head outside his flat in Edinburgh in 2019. Firstly, it appears I got a couple of those involved in the case's names mixed up in the episode I did about Bradley's murder. I said that it was Robert White who had given evidence against Bradley's murderer at the trial via video link, but actually it was Robert's brother Dean White who did this. Robert didn't give evidence, as he had been attacked at home by two men wielding an axe, so he had been too scared to give evidence. So, my mistake. So anyway, Dean White went into witness protection, as his life was in danger, and he gave evidence at the trial via video link, stating that he had witnessed Sean Orman saying he was going to kill Bradley a month before he went on to actually shoot Bradley in the head. However, less than a year later, Dean White was found dead in a flat in East Sussex in England. So despite him going into witness protection and helping to put a murderer away by testifying, it appeared he continued to have a target on his back. Dean was found dead in his flat in March 2022 following a welfare check, and his murderer doesn't appear to have been caught. Then there's the Kevin MacLeod mystery we covered in October 2022. 24-year-old Kevin was found dead in Wick Harbour in 1997 after a night out. It was quickly ruled an accident by the police, however Kevin's family did not agree, and since then there has been a multitude of failings by the police and others discovered. We left the story following yet another review of the investigation carried out by the original police force, this time by an outside police force from England, Merseyside Police, who ruled that while the original police had been ill-equipped and under-resourced at the time of Kevin's death, and that the most basic lines of inquiry had been overlooked, there was no evidence that any police officer or Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service officials committed any criminal acts, and that it was highly unlikely Kevin had been murdered but had drowned after a fall. Kevin's family were reported to have been, understandably, upset over the report findings and were preparing a response to these findings. That was in February 2022, and since then the MacLeod family have, according to the Northern Times in December 2022, totally rejected the findings, and have met with the Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain and Police Scotland Assistant Chief Constable Beck Smith in September 2022, where the 300-page report from the Merseyside Police was explained to the family. The MacLeod family, according to a BBC News article in September 2022, said that they had brought several ongoing concerns to the Lord Advocate's attention that had not been addressed in the report, and she had assured them that they would be investigated robustly, with the family stating that they were thankful for the meeting and felt that they had been listened to. A further meeting took place on the 5th of January 2023 between the MacLeod family and the Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain and senior Crown and police representatives from Merseyside Police and Police Scotland. Any outcomes from that meeting have yet to be made public. Right next. In December 2021, we told the story of Clipper Made of the Seas, about Pan Am Flight 103, which exploded over Lockerbie in Scotland, claiming the lives of all 234 passengers, including David Dornstein, along with 16 crew. As well as those on board Pan Am Flight 103, the bombing also claimed the lives of 11 people on the ground, including Tom, Kathleen and Joanne Flanagan. It seemed like Abdul Basit al-Megrahi would be the only person convicted of having anything to do with the Lockerbie bombing. That was, however, until December 2022, when Abu Aguila Masood, who I mentioned was wanted in connection with the Lockerbie bombing, having been strongly suspected of making the device responsible, was captured by a militia group in Libya and handed over to American authorities to stand trial, which would be held under American rather than Scots law. There is currently no date as to when this trial will begin, but we will update you of any outcome. Just a wee update on our recent episode of the shorts The Pauline McIver Murder, where Michael Wilkinson brutally strangled his daughter's friend, 6-year-old Pauline McIver, before telling his young daughter that he would do the same to her if she said anything. Well, I found out that Michael Wilkinson died from COVID. I don't know about you, but I did wonder what had become of his daughter after she had witnessed and suffered so much at the hands of her father. Well, I did manage to find out that their bond couldn't be broken, and that she continued to visit her father until his death. Okay, so then we have the George Murdoch murder, which was the second episode we released back in July 2021, and there have been so many developments and updates in this case. George Murdoch, who was 58 years old, was a taxi driver in Aberdeen in September 1983 when he was horrifically murdered by a passenger who just happened to be carrying a cheese wire with them that night. George's family appealed in October 2021 on the 38th anniversary of George's murder for any information and for the killer to do the right thing and come forward. At this time, the reward for any information that led to the capture of George's murderer, which was at £10,000 or about $12,200 when our episode was released, was increased to £20,000 or about $24,400 by the kind donation of local newspapers. However, the reward now stands at £50,000 or about $61,100 due to the very kind donation of an Aberdeen taxi firm and then George's family themselves doubling the reward. On the 14th of March 2022, the case was featured on Crime Watch Live, where a reconstruction of the night George was murdered was shown, and another appeal was made for information by Detective Inspector James Callender, where he stated that it was believed that the motive for George's murder was robbery, believing George would have had between £21 and £35, or $25 and $43, in his taxi with him that night. It was also stated on Crime Watch that there was a huge possibility that George's killer may have come from or gone back to another country. As Aberdeen has the oil industry and is a worldwide industry, there is every chance that George's murderer might not be from this country. Later, the detective said that this latest appeal had been quite promising, saying 3 phone calls had been made to Crime Watch Live while he was still at the studio, and that they would be following these lines of inquiry up. And then on the 29th of September 2022, the 39th anniversary of George's murder, fresh and potentially significant information was released. This appeal was asking for anyone to come forward who had information on a male who was likely in their 60s or 70s now, with a small, stocky build, a local Aberdonian accent, and who frequented Wilson's Sports Bar on Market Street in Aberdeen in 2015, or maybe still does frequent here, and is known to wear, or has worn, an Iron Maiden t-shirt. And 2 examples of the t-shirts were given, which I'll add to our website. In October 2022, George's nephew, Alec Mackay, appeared on David Wilson's Crime Files Series 3, Cold Cases, Public Appeals, on the BBC, where he spoke about the case and why himself and his wife are driven to get George's murderer caught. If you'd like to watch this episode, the link will be in the show notes, as well as on our website under George Murdoch's episode. So there has been quite a lot happening with this case, but George's family are still looking for answers, still looking for that one witness to come forward that can lead to them having closure after all this time. If you know anything, however small, you can contact the police on 101 if you're in the UK, or email dedicated inbox scdholmes aberdeen@scotland.pnn.police.uk. or you can send a private message on the George Murdoch Murder Facebook page. Again, all links will be in the show notes and on our website. Regarding a Bible John update, well, I think there will always be new theories and podcasts and documentaries being made about this case and the 3 victims. I did mention in previous episodes, Dawn's Digest, that there was a new podcast by BBC Radio Scotland called Bible John, Creation of a Serial Killer by Audrey Gillen, which I'd recommend having a listen to. Last up is Linda Hunter. Linda was 30 years old when she was murdered in August 1987 by her husband Andrew in Dundee. This case appeared on Crimewatch UK in December 1987, and I said in the Linda Hunter episode that this was the first Scottish case to appear on the programme. Well, I was wrong. So thank you to Jason for letting me know that the actual first Scottish case to appear on Crimewatch UK was in 1985, and it was for the murder of Elizabeth Sutherland. Despite the amount of research I do for each episode, and despite how much I hate getting things wrong, I'm going to get things wrong now and again. I'm only human after all, but I do really appreciate people letting me know if I do get things wrong, so I can put them right. Being as accurate as possible is so important to me, and I always value any input. Okay, so that's all the updates I have on all the episodes we've covered so far. Now, I did say at the end of the Goatfell murder episode we covered in November 2022 that I'd love to hear everyone's opinions on what they thought happened between Edwin Rhodes and John Laurie, and that I would do a debate episode in the new year showcasing everyone's thoughts. Well, that's not going to happen. You have spoken. Or not, as the case may be. I don't have enough feedback to make a fun debate. So sorry about that. I might revisit this again if I do receive enough feedback at a later date. But thank you to those who did contact me with their thoughts. I really do appreciate it. Okay, so that's you all caught up now. There's only one thing left to do, and that's to tell you that next month is going to be a murder-suicide theme. We hope you join us for those episodes. I'm going to leave you with a promo from one of the podcasts on the Darkcast network, Beyond the Rainbow.
Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. I'm CJ, host of Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBT. My episodes focus on crimes committed by and against the LGBTQ community. I've covered cases you probably have heard of, such as Matthew Shepard, Brandon Tina, and the Orlando Pulse nightclub massacre, as well as some lesser-known cases like the murder of Ray Hainish, the Australian gay beat murders, and the suspicious disappearance of Lisa Lynn Stone. I cover cases brought to me by listeners like Penny Brummer, who I believe was wrongfully convicted, taboo cases such as lesbian corrective rape and murder in South Africa, and Pray the Gay Away camps. I discuss gay serial killers, women who pretend to be men to hook up with other women, and trans murders. I'm opinionated and uncensored. I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but surely I'm someone's shot at tequila. No matter what your gender or orientation in life might be, please join me as I tackle rainbow crimes in search of unicorn justice. Remember, it's not a crime to be gay, unless you're a murderer.
Scottish Murders is a production of Clurin Toan.